Welcome to the Influence Factory podcast. This program is dedicated to support professionals who have a desire to develop their digital business influence so they can navigate through a fast-paced, constantly growing digital world. We invite newcomers as well as our family of business influencers to a place to play, share ideas, questions, tips, and guidance with other thought leaders around the globe. Sit back and enjoy our program with your host, Dean DeLisle, as he interviews guests. News and commentary are provided by Jackson DeLisle and Monica Hacker. Power Move lessons are provided by the Influencer Marketing Department at Social Jack. And production, editing, and distribution is provided by the Social Jack production team.
Today's show is brought to you by Planable. Planable.io gives your social media team everything they need to really move their creative process forward. It allows you to preview social media posts as they are live, real time. No more screenshots, mock-ups, spreadsheets. Your clients can review content from within the platform. And do you have anything to say about it, Monica?
It's a great platform. We've been using it now for a month. I love it. It's a game changer in the content world. I highly suggest it.
Yeah, go to Planable, Planable.io to start your free trial today. All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Influence Factory. This week's influencer is Billy Dexter. He's currently managing partner at Heidrick Struggles, a global leadership advisory firm. He works with companies to help them find leadership talent across all industries and sectors. And some of his clients, which are super cool and timely for today's world, the NBA, John Deere, JP Morgan Chase, Deloit, NCAA, LiveNation, and a whole bunch of other companies that I'm sure you've heard of. He's involved primarily, and I learn everything about diversity from this man, but he is the authority on diversity advisory practice. He works with COOs, CHROs, consumer practice, as well as working across the industry groups and sectors. So, Billy, my friend, how you doing, man?
I'm great, Dean. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And, man, I haven't seen you since we were hanging at the Clayton.
That was a great night. That's one of the places that I can really, kind of relax and bring great friends. And, my wife just always says, what the heck do you guys do for like 3, 4, 5 hours? I say, babe, we just have a great cigar and some adult beverages. And we just, talk about every topic you can imagine. And it's a great way to connect.
Yeah, so here's what I think is the magic, and this is the magic that you and I have talked about, and we're going to talk about today, is that we have, when we connected and we met that night, all of a sudden I started running into people that I knew that you also knew, and then all of a sudden our man Haj comes walking into the room, and I've known him since like the beginning days of Haj. And so it was just funny that we knew the same people, I think that's such a Chicago cool thing, but we're also both networkers. So.
Yes. No, that, and that's I've always felt that, one of the things that the Clayton does is allow me to bring people together who in most cases don't know each other, but they have something in common. And when you sit down and just kind of, have a drink in a very cool, relaxed environment, it's amazing how the magic happens. And that is done intentionally, Dean. It's not just happened circumstances. In this case, I didn't know that you knew Haj. So that made it even more special.
Yeah, it's, and I just think, I don't know, that to me is some of the magic that happens when you start getting good people coming together,
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is, and I do it, all day. It's been part of, my life for the last 25, 30 years. But when you find people that have, some commonalities, some things in common, that's where it really starts to blossom, because you can quickly connect on those things, and then it just goes from there.
Yeah, right on, right on. So we're going to get into your story a little bit. Before we do that, I see some pictures behind you of familiar people, and I know you were an All-American in college. So have you always had that competitive sports bug? And I know you work with NCAA and NBA. I'm sure that's no accident. So it's like, is that just a passion of yours that drives you back into the sports world all the time?
Yeah, I enjoyed sports as a youngster in high school and ran track in college. It was one of the places where I first learned the idea of setting goals. And as a freshman, my track coach sat me down and said, "Hey, here's where I think you should be in terms of, your times and these certain events." And they were such a leap from where I had already been. My personal record was, this was a significant leap. And so one, I was fascinated that somebody else thought I could get there. But then what followed was he said, "Well, if this is where you're at and this is where I see you by the end of the season, we've got some work to do." And so that's when, I learned that, setting short-term goals, long-term goals, the importance of practice, being focused. And little did I know at that time that would carry over for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And so when I look at sports, I know the work that has to go there. And a lot of times people view it as a fan, and you just see this great athlete like, Tiger Woods, who is probably the greatest golfer of our time. The amount of work, Dean, that he puts in terms of practicing and getting there, it's just unbelievable. And so I'm drawn to that when people are focused and determined and they've set goals and they achieve it. And you can see that real time in sports. So it's something that I have always enjoyed. And so if you've got an opportunity to do work in those spaces, which I've been fortunate to do with the NCAA and NFL and NBA, working, with the league offices, and it's just been really exciting.
Yeah, that's super cool, and you have to feel blessed by that. And I understand you have twins, right?
Yes, I have twin girls who they will be celebrating their 9th birthday on Saturday. So my wife and I are trying to, put together this virtual birthday party. So it's kind of the new normal, and they're upstairs, and they've got virtual classes going on. Matter of fact, I just ran into them in the kitchen. They were having a little snack before gym. I'm like, how do you do gym virtually? I'm like, look, I can't even get into that. I'm going downstairs. They're excited. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. And a happy birthday to them. I know that's a special time, special age, and I can only imagine how they're processing all this.
Yes. Yeah. No, we've had some real conversations about this with them, and it's amazing, man, how receptive kids are, and so they get it. Probably the biggest thing for them was, telling them, "Hey, won't be going back to school till, the fall." And, they immediately thought about their friends. One of my daughters like, "Well, Dad, I got stuff in my locker. What's gonna baby, it's gonna be okay. You'll be able to get it back." So, kids are resilient, man. They can deal with a lot more stuff than we can in most cases.
No, I know. I talked to my 17-year-old. She's a junior in high school, and it's funny. She's a performer on stage. She sings, and I can hear her sing. They have to sing and record and turn it in as their assignment or sing live, for the instructors. So it's just funny hearing all that going on up in her room, as they're practicing. And I'm like, how are you guys doing that on Zoom? Isn't there like a delay or something?
Right. Well, and I know we'll probably get into this later, but, this has created some tremendous opportunities. I kind of, I forced myself to look at this time as a unique opportunity versus, something negative, whether it's a unique opportunity to spend this time with my girls, because I'm usually traveling, or for me and my wife to do some cool things, or work on our house, whether it's, the opportunity to reconnect with clients and friends, and because everybody's at home, so, I think this is a real unique opportunity and time for us. And I've just kind of chosen to, it took me a while to, after maybe week 5, and I think we're in week 7 or so, to find the right rhythm.
Yeah.
And to kind of, look at this from a positive standpoint. And ever since I've embraced that, I'm okay. I mean, this actually works out pretty well.
Yeah, it's funny. I appreciate that. It's, when it started to happen, and, I grew up on the streets, you had your share of that as well, which we'll get into in a minute. But I think it was an opportunity for me personally to slow down a little bit. I was 2 cities a week, and I was getting ready to do maybe 3 cities a week. And that grill, that's a drill in itself, right? And so, and then you're home on the weekends and you're tired and everybody wants to do something and you're like, okay, let's do it. And you're just like, you got to reach in for that athlete in you to keep moving through the weekend. And one of the things related to COVID that really sort of had me slow down a little bit was the fact that, when it all started to happen, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, let's get my family together across the country and get them on a Zoom call and we can see everybody. And we did this happy hour with the family. And then all of a sudden I'm like looking at everybody and looking at the kids and the kids growing up and everything like that. And I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, I'm in this business of broadcasting and doing shows and webcasting. And I said, why didn't I think of this sooner? I could have been with my family on a more regular basis instead of twice a year, and I'm just like, so I like what you said, because it's like a realization of being even more connected when we can't be in person. And I think it's opened up a whole new world there.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. You just got to kind of, stop for a second and think about the opportunities to connect. I think they're even more so, readily available with the use of technology.
Yeah, and I'm doing walks. I'm doing like 2-hour, I probably 3 miles or so a day. And I never did that. I was always rushing somewhere. So I'd rush to the gym and I'd rush here and I'd rush there, and then I would be like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I noticed so many more people and things around my neighborhood and my area and my surroundings that I just never knew. I never paused enough to know. Yeah.
No, I dusted off, but I have this very expensive bike that I probably haven't ridden in 2 years.
Same.
It's been hanging, on the wall in the garage. I dusted it off, took it to the bike shop, got it, ready to go, and been, riding in the neighborhood, really just kind of appreciating, where I live, and, it's just so many positive things that can come out of that. The thing that you have to kind of balance is, so once you find a rhythm and you got, good stuff going, I've noticed that the news can really be, a downer. And you've gotta kind of manage the intake of that. I think it's appropriate to, you want to be up to date, you want to know what's happening, but this constant having the news on in the background, checking it all the time, I felt like that was kind of, getting you, anxiety, the scoreboard of, cases and deaths, and it's just like, is this real?
Yeah.
So I just gotta kind of manage it and find the right rhythm.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Well, listen, I've been dying to dig into your story because you and I have swapped stories several times, and I sort of want to take it back to the childhood, how you grew up, because I believe that's what molds us and makes us who we are. And you and I have talked about this a number of times. If you could just take us back and take us through, sort of the story about, how you got into, how you grew up and how you got into college. I'm going to let you take it from there because it's an amazing story.
Okay. Well, so Dean, as you know, we've talked about this, and for me to be comfortable in talking about this on a podcast, that's a journey in itself. I mean, because for years, this was something that I was embarrassed and, didn't really own my own story, but I've since embraced it and I'm comfortable with it. And I know that I just kind of own my own truth and I think my journey and some of the things that I've experienced is, can be a great lesson. And that was one of the reasons why we included it in the book. But essentially, grew up in Detroit, the fourth of five kids. My parents moved from the south, part of the Great Migration in the 50s, from the Mobile, Alabama area to Detroit, where the promise of jobs working in and as we called it back then, the plant. Whether it was Ford, General Motors, Chrysler, and so we settled. My parents settled there, had five kids, and we kind of grew up around the whole Motown thing. The went to school with Diana Ross's kids and. Temptations lived around the corner. I mean, so everything was, the way to get out of the hood was to, to be an entertainer, back then, or an athlete. And then of course, in the mid '60s, early '70s, the drug climate was real big. So. You saw a lot of that in the neighborhood as well.
Oh yeah.
And so just going through school and doing navigating through. I'd always enjoyed school and was athlete, played football and ran track in high school. And when I was 13, and I should state that I have a younger brother, so I'm the fourth of five, and he's the baby, if you will. But one of the interesting things is that we are only 10 months apart.
Wow.
And so I think they called it Irish twins or something like that. But it was, my mother was kind of, obsessed with this twin thing. So a lot of people thought that we were twins.
That's funny.
And I was held back for school, so we started at the same time. And so we went from kindergarten through 12th grade, in the same school, and probably up until we were 14, we wore whatever we wore to school or whatever. He had one color, I had the other color, and it was I used to hate my mom for doing that to us, and we weren't really twins.
Right.
Relatives would say, "Hey, where are the twins?" So, but anyway, at 13, my parents divorced, and my older brothers and sisters were kind of, on their own journey, and my two older sisters, both had gotten, I think they were both pregnant by 15, 16 years old. And my older brother got caught up in kind of drugs and, spent some time in jail. And so it was a tough, upbringing. At 13, parents got divorced. And so my mom now was just raising me and my brother in our 2-bedroom home. And I remember, Dean, that she sat us on the couch and said, "Look, hey, it's just the three of us now. Mama's going to do whatever she can to take care of you boys. But when you become 18, you're a man, you're going to be on your own." And never forget, that just impacted me so strongly because, I took it literally. I said, wow, 13, I got to figure this out, and so, it started to kind of shift some things in my mind that, I don't know if I ever thought that she would actually put me out the house. But she definitely instilled that I needed to take some ownership and figure out what my life was going to be at 18. So for 2 months of the year, my brother and I are the same age. And so, we shared a room with one bed that we slept in the same bed, I think, until we were 15. I
bet those were some wrestling matches there.
Oh yeah. Get your feet out of my face, all that type of thing. But it really helped us to bond together, and we would spend time talking about, hey man, what are you gonna do? I don't know. What are you gonna do? Every year we'd kind of challenge each other. And cool. Then when we got to I was 17. And I was a senior, going into my senior year. I was really kind of obsessed with that thought of what I was going to do. So I kind of came up with 3 choices. And that was, one, to get a job in Detroit. And when I say a job, it's, I'm talking about probably an hourly job. And hopefully one that had benefits, or 2, go to the service, which was, honorable thing. A lot of men in my family had done that.
When I think at that time, we all had that checkbox as a possibility. My dad was in this. My dad was in the service too. So I was always one checkbox away from screw this. I'm going to the Air Force or whatever it is.
Right. Yeah. No. So, and it wasn't a bad option either.
Right.
But it's just, a totally different route.
Right.
And then, Dean, the third one was the thought of going on to college. And which was, today's might seem, why wouldn't that be the first option? Well, the reason why it was the third option was that I didn't even know anybody that went to college.
Yeah.
It wasn't education was never something that we had talked about in our family. No one in my, kind of immediate circle was thinking about college. So it was really this kind of remote, thing.
And I've got to imagine I grew up around the steel mills of Gary, right? And so it was like everybody was going to the mill.
Yeah,
And so absolutely. I had to imagine you're in the, Motor City Madhouse there. I imagine it was the same thing, right? You're going to go work at Ford or whatever, right? So
and those weren't bad options. I mean,
right.
back then, where could you, with the high school diploma or a GED, get a middle class job,
Right.
without education. That was something that thousands of families experienced that. So that would have been the ultimate. If I would have landed a job there, then man, it just now you can work this for 20, 30 years and you're good.
And I bet you had friends that went that path, right?
Oh, yeah. Friends and family.
Same. Yeah,
friends and family. Yeah. So I decided that I wanted to pursue this college thing, and wasn't smart enough to go to a guidance counselor. I figured I'd kind of do this on my own.
Sure.
And so unbeknownst to anybody, I started going to the library on Saturdays, and I would fill out a college application. And I get a money order and send it along, because back then I think it was $30, $40 to get it processed. You had to send along a check or a money order, and I certainly didn't have a checking account or anything like that. But I did have a job where I was bussing tables, and I made.
So was I. Yeah, that's right. We were both bus boys.
yeah, bussing tables, and so so I would take half of my paycheck every week and send off a college application. Okay, no strategy, no why this school, just if they had a good football team or I had heard of them or something, and so I'd send off all these applications. And my thinking at the time was that I wasn't going to tell anybody, because if this didn't work, no one would know.
Yeah, right.
And so I just signed up for the service. And during that process, I did go to the Army office and went through the whole presentation, and we spent about 2 hours together. I did everything but sign. And I told the guy, I said, hey, look, if my other option doesn't come through, I'll be back. I basically hold the spot for me,
That's funny.
I'll be back if this doesn't work. And of course, I was getting letters every week from them. So sent off all these college applications, and by the time that was done, Dean, I realized that I sent 16 applications out. And of course, you had to take this thing called the ACT and SAT, which I had no idea what it was about, and I did no preparation. Found out where you could take it. I paid for it. And again, keep in mind, as a 17-year-old kid, no one knows. My parents, my father, mother, brother, sister, no one knows that I'm even pursuing this whole thing. And so I took the test. I thought it was a joke. I mean, I just making patterns on the test because I didn't know any of that. And of course, my score didn't come out very good at all. But I started getting responses from the schools. And every other day I would get a letter, and they were all rejections. And basically saying, and I should note, this is critical part of the story. I had a 2.4 GPA. Okay. And my philosophy there was, as I understood, a C passed. And so that was my goal, was to do as little as I could to just make sure that I passed. I could understand why people were doing homework and, trying to get an A. What is that all about?
Well, you were in track at the time too, right?
Right. Yeah. I was an athlete, and I also played football too. And
right.
So the thing with our coaches was passing your classes.
Yep.
So by the time I was a senior, I had all C's, and it started to show up when all these schools started denying me admission. And by the time it was over, all 16 schools basically said I wasn't college material and denied me admission. However, there was one school that back then we called it ding letters, and I still have the book. For some reason, back then I decided that I was going to keep these letters, got them laminated, put them in a folder, and so at one of the schools was the school Saginaw Valley State College in Saginaw, Michigan, which was 2 hours and change away from the inner city of Detroit. So they turned me down, Dean, but at the bottom of the letter, they said, if you would like to discuss this decision, give us a call and set up an appointment. Now, none of the other letters gave me that option. I was just flat out, no, I'm sorry to inform you, blah, blah, blah. So I called them and said, hey, I'd like to set up an appointment. We set up an appointment, and I'm sure they never thought that, anybody would call, but I did. And so now
I'm thinking in my head, who put this on the bottom of these letters? Exactly. The conversation at the office.
Right, exactly. So I called them again. I'm 17-year-old. No one knows this. So I get this appointment. Now I run into my first hurdle. We don't even own a car, Dean, and this is 2 hours, right. 2 hours and 15 minutes away. And so now I got to figure out how am I going to get up there. And again, I'm trying to keep this secret. So my buddy had just gotten his driver's license, and he had a little piece of a car, and he was really proud of it, took care of it, and so I approached him at lunch one day and said, hey man, I got this interview for school up in Saginaw. I got $30 on gas, man. Can you roll me up there? And he was too excited to do it.
Road trip.
Road trip. Yeah. So imagine two 17-year-old kids.
Oh yeah.
We didn't tell our parents. We skipped school that day. And he came and picked me up, not at my house, at a gas station, a couple blocks away. So no one would suspect anything. We bought a map. We mapped it out on the hood, and, we hopped in the car and drove up to Saginaw, Michigan. Little did I know that was going to be such a significant point in my life. But so we get up there, Jane, we make it, and I own one suit, and I change in the back seat and put on my suit, and I get ready to go into my appointment. And my buddy says, "Hey, Billy, let's pray about this." And so he again, two 17-year-old kids. He prays with me. We're up in this rural part of Saginaw, Michigan, which I at that point had never really been out of Detroit. And so I go in and I sit there, wait for my appointment. Lady comes out and calls my name, and she says, "Oh, where are your parents?" And I say, "Well, my parents, they had to work. I made up something." She says, "Well, you here by yourself?" I go, "Yes, ma'am." "How did you get here?" I told her I said my cousin drove me. "Where's he?" He decided to stay in the parking lot. "So you guys came up here from Detroit by yourself?" "Yes, ma'am." "Wow. Come on in." So we go in and sit, and basically it took her all of 5 minutes, Dean, to look at my transcript and basically say, "Hey, doesn't look like, there's any indication that you could be successful here, and, you had a 2.4 and blah, blah, blah." And basically said, "Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do anything for you."
Do you remember that moment?
Oh, I remember the conversation. I remember everything that she said to me. And I distinctively remember my response because I don't know where it came from. But I basically said, well, ma'am, that the transcript that you're looking at, that's not who I am. I never really applied myself, and all I really want is a chance. I know I can do it. I just need someone to give me a chance and to believe in me. And I know it says, it was actually a 2.38, so I always say 2.4. Makes it sound better, but that's not the person I am. And so she listened and basically still said no because I fell well below kind of their bottom line. I think if you had like a 2.8, they would maybe consider a special program. And so and I was just gracious because this was my last shot, and starting to realize, okay, maybe this is not going to happen. Yeah. I always had the service, so as I'm getting ready to leave, she said, "Well, hold on a minute. Listen, I need you to really hear me on this. I'm not sure if there's a lot we can do, but you deserve our best. And I'm going to ensure that we look at all options. So give us a couple weeks. You'll hear something, but I need you to know it doesn't look good, but you deserve our best. You made the effort to come up here, and we're going to see what we can do."
Nice.
And so I left out of there, went back to the car, and he said, "How'd it go?" I go, "Man, I got a little bit of a chance here." And so I go back home. No one knows that I did this road trip. But I think my mother started to get a hint of something because every day I'm checking the mail, Dean. I finally, maybe a week or so later, get a letter from them because this is way before email and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was one of those one-pagers, which I had gotten 16 of them already.
Right.
I knew what that felt like. And I remember going into the basement, which was unfinished and dimly lit. And I was just afraid to open this because I knew that it was going to be impacting my future. And so I finally got the courage to open it and read it. And the first word was congratulations. You've been admitted on probation. If you can get a C+ average over 12 credit hours, we'll consider you for full admission.
Wow.
Man, I started crying like a baby. And it was the first time that someone really believed in me.
Yeah.
And I felt like first time, someone gave me a chance.
Well, you got the break. You got the break on the streets, man. We're always looking for that chance. Yes. Give me a chance, right? Give me an opportunity, and I will run with it because I got to get out of here.
Yeah, I'm not asking for anything extra, but just if you can give me a chance, let me prove myself. That's all I want. So, so what happens next was really telling because I run upstairs, my mom's asleep, and I wake her up, jump on her bed, and Mom, look, I got this letter. So she reaches and put on her glasses, and she reads this, and she goes, her first words were, "College? What college wants you?"
Thanks, Mom.
Keep in mind, she no reference of college, no. But what she knew about me, I wasn't college material either, according to my mom. And then she said, she said, "Wow, okay, baby, I can barely put food on the table for you and your brother," because there were times, Dean, when we were on welfare and very limited resources. I can't afford no college. How much is this going to cost? And so, Dean, that was the first time that I realized that I thought once you got accepted, it was paid for. That's how raw this was. Because I didn't go to anybody to get counseling.
Yeah, no guidance counselor,
once
nothing.
I got accepted, I'm scholarship, financial aid, whatever. I don't have to pay anything.
But think about that. You didn't have any of those limiting things in there either, right? So it was like, I'm going for it. Nobody's stopping me.
Right. So that was actually probably a blessing.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think about how I was going to pay for it. It was just focused on someone giving me a chance. And I would say, and my mother would for years talk about how I didn't hesitate. I said, Mom, God wants me to go to college. He's going to help me find a way. And so shortly after, I heard about financial aid and started applying, and I ended up receiving it. And now, I'm on my way.
Nice.
And so got over the first hurdle. I'm now in college. I live in the inner city. Everything's pretty much all Black in my world at that point, to total opposite. Where rural northern Michigan, and campus is very rural. I think there may be 3% African Americans, at school. I get into a dorm where I've got 7 white roommates, and in most of my classes, I'm the only African American. And I really, for the first time, Dean, started to realize how underprepared that I was.
Yeah.
I worked so hard to get there. But by the end of my first week, I'm like, oh, this is the bad call.
It's like putting everything into tryouts and then realizing, oh man, I got to show up and play.
Right. So I'm in my classes and people are taking notes. I realized I'd never taken notes. Dean, I in high school, man, I can't even remember a time when I did homework because I was an athlete and I got passed through. And so all this was new. And so by the end of that first week, I realized that, man, I'm in over my head. I got nothing. But I'd met a guy who was a senior at orientation. He was from the Detroit area as well, and he kind of motivated me and told me to, hey, there's some study skills workshops. They'll teach you how to take tests, how to take notes, how to study. That'll get you up to speed. I had to do the same thing, but man, you can make this. And then he said, there'll be a lot of people that say you ought to go back to Detroit and get yourself together, and then consider coming back. But every time you hear that, you double down on yourself and use that as a motivation and say, I am not leaving here without this degree. And so I didn't really know what that meant. But man, did that show up a few weeks later. A few months later, as I started navigating my way and started hitting some obstacles that so many times that was the go-to phrase. Well, hey, after this semester, you should probably go on back to Detroit, go to community college and, all that. And I just kind of used that to motivate me. And I'll just wrap up and say, I was able to get a 2.5 that first semester. So I got to C+ right on the nose with taking the four classes. I was admitted on fully into the university the second semester, and end up navigating my way through for 4 years. Had every financial and academic challenge that you could imagine. But now I was pretty kind of battle tested in terms of obstacles and challenges. I just kind of took them head on. And there were so many, Dean. I'll just tell you one that was, and keep in mind, most of my college classmates and teammates had no idea that I was going through this. But one semester after coming back from the summer, where I had a summer job working at an amusement park in Ohio, Cedar Point.
Oh, yeah. Okay, right.
Yeah, and I stayed there and lived there for the summer, come back, and had saved about $800. But I came back to find out that I was number 38 on the waiting list for a dorm. My financial aid hadn't come through, and I found myself in the director of financial aid's office, and he basically was the first time he told me, said, "Hey, look, this is not going to work out for you. No place for you to stay. I don't see how you're going to pay for your classes. I think you should, going back home, come back, try this in second semester in January, and we'll be ready for you then." And I remember sitting there going, "No, not happening. I'm going to figure this out." So a series of incidents happened that just really made me say, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be. So I walk out of his office trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I'm going to the register to figure out if I could, what's the process to register for classes.
Right.
And I find out the minimum deposit that you can put down for classes to at least the first deposit was $400 for classes.
There's your goal.
I'm like, okay, all right. I got 800, so I put $400 down. And so while I'm in line to sign, because you had to sign up for a different line for different classes, so I'm in line for this other class, and now I still have no place to go to live. I overhear these two women talking about Delta College, which was about 6 miles down the road, that they had some open dorm rooms that they were renting to Saginaw Valley students. And so I kind of lean in and I hear that. I go, wow. So I step out of line and I go to a phone booth. Okay, I'm really dating myself. Put in
Did you have quarters?
Right. Put in a couple quarters, call the operator, they connect me, and they say that they have two rooms left. And I said, "Oh, could you hold one for me? I'll be right over there." And so a friend of mine let me use her car. And so I drove over there, the 6 miles, get in there. And I didn't even ask how much it was. I was just so excited that, I got a place, and find out the deposit to get a room was $400.
Of course.
I got $400 in my pocket.
Right.
So I'm in school my second semester, my second year, and I'm living at Delta College, which is 6 miles away, and it was in a very rural environment. And I didn't have a car. So then it was one of the other obstacles that were presented in front of me. And again, I was thinking, man, I'm not leaving here without this degree. I'm gonna double down on myself. So without anybody knowing, I would get up at 5 a.m. every morning, and I would run down these two long country roads. It was pitch black. 3 miles one way, 3 miles another way. And I'd get to campus, and one of my the only person that knew about this was one of my teammates. He would let me keep my stuff there in the room.
Oh, that was nice.
And I would shower there in their dorm room. And because, college students don't get up till 10 or 11 or something. So I would shower and use their bathroom before anybody was up. And then I was off doing my classes. And I did that for a whole semester. And it was, and in the evening I would go to study hall or the library and kind of linger around and, hang out a little bit until, people kind of start, dying off and going back to their room. I would go back to their dorm room, change, and run back in the pitch black darkness. I mean, you're hearing coyotes and raccoons and all kind of stuff. But the only person that knew about that was my buddy who let me use his room. But it was just stories like that I was able to triumph through and end up having by the next semester, I became an RA, which gave me free room and board. And now, and then my financial aid kicked in. And then I find myself back in the financial aid office and the director's telling me, hey, we got a problem. You have too much money now. Because the RA job took care of my room and board.
Right.
So now I got to give money back. But long story short, then I end up having a transformational experience. Ran track in college, joined the team, became a captain. We won national championships for NAIA in my sophomore and junior year. Just transformational experience. I, became a resident assistant, the president of student government, first Black homecoming king they ever had. That was kind of crazy. But end up graduating with a 3.2 GPA in 4 years. And
what was the degree?
The degree was in education, in history. I wanted to be a history teacher until I did my student teaching, which was right at the end. I was like, oh, no. But I was already, done at the end. But what I'd realized was it wasn't, I thought it was the teaching aspect, but what I really wanted to do was be in a university environment, an educational environment, and not necessarily, in the classroom.
Right.
And so that kind of started my first half of my career in university administration. But graduated in 4 years, and ironically, my parents never came to visit me in those 4 years. I think my younger brother came one time and spent the weekend with me, but 4 years really never had anybody, coming to visit me. There were times when there was 1 year where I had a job at the mall, working during Christmas time at JCPenney. And remember back then, the big day for shopping was the day after Christmas.
Okay. You mean Thanksgiving or?
Yeah, well, you got the Thanksgiving, and then you got, the deals that happened during that Thanksgiving to Christmas, and then you got another,
extra shopping
time between Christmas and New Year's.
Yeah, right.
So I decided that, because school was out, I think like maybe December 10th, and there was prime shopping time. So everybody went home, Dean, maybe by the 15th of December. And I decided to stay on campus because I had a job, and one of my friends left me her car. And the whole campus closed down, and I I was an RA, so I was able to stay by myself on the campus for 3 weeks because I didn't want to go home to miss, the hours to be able to work. So I had Christmas, by myself in my little dorm room, but it was just a time that I had to do whatever I needed to do. But I graduated in 4 years and had a transformational experience. And then once I graduated, which was crazy, was that because of all the challenges and things that I had gone through, I never went back to campus. And a few years later, after when I graduated, I went to work at Central Michigan University because I wanted to be a university administrator. And then shortly after that, I went to Michigan State, working there, and I got a master's degree. But it took 27 years for me to finally go back to campus. And I kind of buried that whole experience in terms of all the challenges and obstacles. And I didn't want anybody to know about that, Dean, because I was embarrassed. When I would talk about my college experience, I would talk about Michigan State versus Saginaw Valley, and it was a positive experience. But I just felt so embarrassed that I had to beg my way into school. I had every challenge. I didn't know how to study, but I overcame it. And so my big thing was, you don't need to know how my story started. Right. Just know I showed up. You can count on me. And so it took the university reaching out to me 26 years later. And, they kept calling me at my current job.
Was it any of the same people that were there when you were there?
No, this was all new people. But here's the crazy thing. So when I was there, I was one of the founding members of this organization called OBU, Organization of Black Unity. And it was, our first Black affinity group. And some students, almost 30 years later, were doing research. They were members of this group, and they Googled me and found my story, and for some reason decided to, because when I graduated, the student newspaper did do a feature story on me. And the title of it was "The University Gets It Right." But they tell the story of this guy who was denied admission, and now he's graduating 4 years later as student government president, and giving remarks on behalf of the class. Nice. And so that was buried in the archives, and they did this research of the founding members. And so they submitted a application for the Distinguished Alumni Award. And so the university was reaching out to me after 27 years and saying, "Hey, Billy, give us a call. We want to talk to you." And I'm like, "What? I haven't heard from you guys or talked to anybody in 27 years. Dean, I'm thinking I still owe some money." And
that's exactly what I was thinking too.
And I'm like, "Well, nah, not so much. I'm not going to call you guys if you." So they probably called about 5 times before my assistant finally said, "Billy, I got nothing else. Could you just call them back? Because they keep wanting to talk to you." And so when I called them back, they said, "Look," told me the story. Say, we're calling to tell you you won. The university would like to honor you with the Distinguished Alumni Award. We give only one of these a year. And you're our recipient. Would you please come back? And Dean, when I tell you I had buried all of that experience, never talked to it about anybody. And so my immediate response was, "Wow, I mean, are you sure you got the right person? They go, absolutely. And I told them, I said, I'd have to think about it. I'm not sure I can come back. And so they were shocked. But that was my true answer. And I said, let me think about it. I'll call you back. So, I knew in my heart that there was no way I felt like I could go back there, because I just, I buried those. Life had been good. And it just reminded me when so many people doubted me. So I just kind of buried that whole experience. And so I did talk. Probably the only person who knew the journey was my brother. My parents had passed away by then. And I told him, he's a minister in Detroit now.
That's cool.
And I told him, and he was just so excited. And when I told him what I said I couldn't do it, he said, dude, are you kidding me? He said, man, Billy, you've been running from this your whole life, man.
Oh, yeah.
God gave you this incredible journey. Dude, it's time to tell the story, man. This is bigger than you. Because you were dealt all of these cards that say that this wasn't an option for you. And look at you taking lemons and made lemonade. You got to tell this story. Get past whatever it is that you're struggling with. You owe this to other people. So, that wasn't what I was expecting to hear.
Right, exactly.
From my younger brother. And I still said, man, I can't, Mike. I just can't. And then he said, well, look, if you don't do it for you, do it for Mom.
Yeah.
So
he got you then.
I'm like, oh man, you gonna pull that one out? And so I decided to do it, and end up having to. When I say I buried it, I never told my wife any of these stories.
Oh wow!
And I tried to go up there by myself, and because she was pregnant, and she insisted in going, so I had to tell her on the way there. And once we got there, it was just this incredible embracing of me and my journey. And, we're getting awards from the board of directors. And I'm the key guest of the board of regents and key to the university, and giving us gifts. And of course, I get caught up and, I write a big check, and so, which was perfect, right on cue. So now I'm reconnected, and then I go back to, we got the ceremony, and when I tell you, Dana, I've never told anybody the story. So I told my wife on the way there. And so I decided to share a little bit of the journey, and, with this audience of about 500 people. And I was able to get through. The other thing, I didn't really, want my family or anybody to come, because I just wanted to kind of get this over with, because I knew I was going to be emotional. But my wife reached out to my family, and they brought a whole crew of folks in.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So basically, told them some parts of the story, but I opened and said, hey, this is a full circle moment for me.
Yeah.
I could not have imagined that I would be here receiving this, because the university originally denied me admission. But I'm grateful and thankful that they gave me this opportunity. And it changed not only my life, but it changed the trajectory of my whole family's life, because I now have nieces and nephews, that are college graduates, and cousins, and because I was the first one to go on to school.
Right.
So it was pretty cool, man. Once I got embraced it and got reconnected, and some of my teammates came, my coach, and so it was a pretty special time.
Yeah, that's cool, man. And it inspires me every time when I hear the story, and it's just it's just a testament to, I wrote down, never stop going for it. I don't even know how you would say that, but I was like, Jackson's like, what are we going to name this episode? We always figure it out, and I'm just like, man, I just feel like never stop going for it. Cause no matter what, you were like, I'm not taking no.
Right.
No's not an option. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really what it was. It wasn't an option for me. And I tell you, the one footnote that I'd be remiss if I didn't say. So after I got reconnected with the university, I'm going back and forth. I'm speaking. I'm doing different things. I get a call, and this is maybe 3 years later, where the university, the president calls me. I think I'm in New York or something. And, when I was there as a student, it was maybe 3,000 students there. And now it's like 12,000 or something like that. And it's a huge campus. And back then, when I was there, it was 10 buildings. But he called me and asked me, he said, hey, what are you doing on, December, I think it was 16th or 17th or something like that. And I said, well, I'm probably going to be with my family in Arizona. We usually go there for Christmas. He said, well, we would be honored if you would deliver the commencement to the university. I was silent. I go, what? And he said, yeah, no. I said, are you talking about this to the College of Education? He goes, no. This is in a stadium to all of our graduates. Matter of fact, it's on Friday and Saturday, so you got to do it twice. But yeah, this is in front of probably about 8,000 people. And I call him Doc. I go, Doc, what? Are you kidding me? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, okay. And he said, I said, what is I was on the bottom of the list here? You guys couldn't find anybody? He goes, no, just the opposite. I get to make these invitations twice a year. And it has to be a unanimous vote from the Board of Regents for me to extend the offer. And I would like to extend it to you. So then now I'm coming back, and man, to, talking about a full circle moment, Dean.
Yeah, right.
And I remember, because I fretted over the speech, and there's two things, from the speech. One, how I started. I said, this is a full circle moment for me. I remember when I was graduating, which was, almost 30 years, ago, where I sat in your seat. And one of the things that the speaker told me to do was to dream big. And I remember thinking about that. But I could never have imagined to dream big enough that I would be that same guy coming back to deliver commencement 30 years later. Just not an option. And then the other thing that I, told them, I said, one of the things, because I shared a little bit about the journey. I said, one of the things that kept me motivating, particularly when I was running, back and forth from Delta College to Saginaw Valley, I had a 3 words that kind of motivated me, and I still use them to this day. But it was the thought of, why not me? Why not me getting this degree? Why not me doing this? Why not me? And so that's kind of been a theme of my life and my career. And so that was kind of the theme of my commencement speech to them. Nice. So yeah, so it was a full circle experience, man. that I couldn't have written this.
Oh man, thank you so much. And see, I told you we'd use the whole time on the story, man, because I can't. I love hearing the story all the time. So it's like I wanted everyone to hear it. So as we wrap up, you have a book out and you do a lot of speaking as well. And when COVID lifts its ban, we can go to public speaking in person. But people can have you for interviews like this or have you speak in front of their organizations and help motivate them. What's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I can be reached at bdexter1 at comcast.net. Cell number is 312-315-4599, or even on LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn. We'll give that link.
I'm available on LinkedIn. And the book, I tell a lot more about the journey, but the book is really about the lessons that I've learned around making connections.
Yeah.
And it's called Making Your Network: The Art and Science of Career and Business Networking.
Yeah.
And I talk about just kind of my journey, and the college piece was just the first part of it, but I've had an amazing career with some pretty cool experiences. And a lot of that was built around some of the connections that I've made along the journey that, helped me to, have a pretty full life. And I'd never even thought about writing a book. But the networking thing was something I've just been passionate about for almost 30 years. And people would always say, you should write a book. You're a master networker. You have all these amazing connections and nobody thinks about this like you. Yeah. And so a couple of years ago, Melissa Wilson and I had an opportunity to write this amazing book.
Yeah, and it is amazing. So we'll give you all those notes in the show notes, folks, and you'll be able to look below wherever you're listening and get all this contact information. But Billy, just from the bottom of my heart, you've been one of my blessed connections, and I'm inspired by you. I love I love what you do. I love that we have some similar roots that really, I think, helps develop who we are, and the fact that you are solid about making sure that we all connect. Yeah. So I appreciate you for that. And I appreciate you being one of our influencers, and please don't stop, man. Don't stop.
Dean, thank you so much for the opportunity to share my story. I really appreciate it.
You got it, my man. All right. And then we'll see you real soon as everything else opens up. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
Take care, man.
Take care.